Relaxed and refreshed and ready to go. Just a couple of things. If you are on Zoom, can you please, because there's a real mixture of people Zooming and not Zooming, can you try and use your little raised hand emoji thing if you are on Zoom, just so that I don't miss you, because the hand stays there until you remove it. So if you want to chip in, feel free, but please just use the little hand at the bottom. And if you don't know where that is, go down to the reactions, little smiley face at the bottom. And there's some options there. I'd prefer if you use the hand rather than the wavy hand, not anything else. Welcome, Wilma. I haven't seen you for a while. Welcome back. Before we go any further, I just would like to welcome a new staff member.
So I'd like to introduce Dom Rakiti. Dom is our new Chief Transformation Officer.
Dom, would you like to do a wee mihi, or would you just like to say hello? Nothing like being dumped right in it.
Yeah. Piki mara. Motuaru ki au e tūnei, o te hei Māori ora. Ko Dom Rakiti taku ingoa. I'm new Chief Transformation Officer at AES, and I'm nearly through, halfway through week 2. So far so good, very pleased to be here, and look forward to working more with you in the future. Kia ora.
Kia ora, thanks very much, Dom. Right, on to the business. Apologies, don't think we have any. Neville, are you there? Oh yes, good out. Declarations of interest. Item 5, confirmation, item 4, public forum petitions and deputations, don't have any. Confirmation of minutes from the 17th of November, please.
I'll move that, but can I put the comments?
Yep, once we've got a seconder. Thank you. Moved Councillor McCallum, seconded Councillor McPhail. Comment, please.
Related but not directly in the minutes, we seem to have another objective connect come through last night, and I was wondering, has that superseded the original one that came through? Was there something reason, because they look the same, they act the same, but it's just clarification of what document we're to work off, because I have my stuff on the previous document.
I'm not aware if there haven't been any changes.
And I wasn't either, so.
So could I just ask if there is a secondary update that you actually clarify what the update is, because it doesn't have a rewrite, because it looks like there's a superseded document. But that's my first point. The second point is, I'm not clear whether under the debt review in March and the age debtors report, which is on page 11 or 7 of this document, I don't see that coming through through the past. So I'm not sure whether that's actually been fulfilled.
Won't the age debtors one come up in the finance meeting next?
Well, I think this is post November, December, so I thought that would have been in this meeting.
Not my understanding, actually. We've got it in for the debtor review in March, and the age debtors report at a high level would be provided in each of the 4 financial OPEC reports. Is it clear enough? Yep.
Thank you.
Anything else? Any other corrections or questions?
Just on the fact that we bring these minutes through to the full council meeting, and these meeting minutes have already been sort of looked at and discussed. If we've brought up any issues then, when do they get, recorded, or, because we seem to be almost doubling up, and if we do this at a council meeting, look at these minutes, and then any matters arising, well, do we have any matters arising when we talked about it in December?
One of the
Where do we capture?
yeah. So one of the avenues I tried to start last year was the effectively the action sheet, or the in other forums you would call it matters arising from the minutes. So is that the avenue you are
Well, yeah, I'm
getting
just-
at,
I'm
or
just
something
thinking-
else? I know, yeah.
We asked the same question twice, and how do we respond the first time? Where have we noted down how we responded the first time if we looked at these minutes? We're looking at it more thoroughly this time because it's open. I just feel like we are going through a duplication process to a point.
We'll have a look at that, actually, give that some consideration and come back to you.
Yeah, because with the action sheet slash matters arising hasn't quite found its place in the system yet either, so I think that all ties some of that up, Ellen, because I think, yeah, it's very easy to get some of the questions lost and the responses lost if we don't keep track of it. So happy to talk about that with you, and if you've got suggestions for how we can make that systematic, so that if there's a change of people or personnel, that process doesn't get lost. Thanks for that.
Madam Chair, I think, look, I'm pretty sure we've looked at this before, so I'm sure there'll be Jen or someone will be able to have a bit of narrative around his how deal with it.
Might just mean it needs to be,
Yeah, I'll follow that up.
might just need to be a bit more obvious even. We'll just see what the story is. Thanks, councillor. Any other questions regarding the minutes? If not, I will move those. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried, thank you. Right. There are no notifications of extraordinary or urgent business. I've had no questions, and as far as I'm aware, there are no councillor reports. No, thank you. Right. Item 9.1 for the Health and Safety and Wellbeing Management System report. Welcome, Paul. Happy New Year. Take it away.
So I take the report has been read, so I'll just highlight some key things I'd like to bring up. First of all, I'd just like to acknowledge the work that's been done by the incident management team. So that's the team that is navigating us through the turbulent times of COVID at the moment. So in the last quarter, quite a lot of work had to be done around changing from the level system to the traffic light system. So it just presented a whole suite of different circumstances, particularly when dealing with things like events and vaccination passes and things like that. So I'd just like to acknowledge the good work that they've done in that space and guiding us through this current scenario we're in. From a vaccination risk assessment and point side of things, so we had the mandated vaccination requirement for our education workers. So these are workers that will be engaging with students and schools and so on. So that's a mandated vaccination requirement. So it impacted on a few roles within our organisation, which went through the consultation process, the risk assessment process, and was finally signed off. Just on the vaccination side of things, further to that, we've undertaken a further risk assessment for our dive program, for our Undera dive program divers, and then also conducted risk assessments for the organisation-wide vaccination policy, which has gone to our Health and Safety Committee in the meantime. From a risks perspective, just added the COVID-19, so the two variants. So we've got those two new variants, Delta and Omicron. So those were added to our risk register. And then also the acquisition of the light utility vehicle, the side-by-side. So that was also added to our risk register. And some further work is required just around training specifically for some of our operators on that new piece of equipment, which is currently underway. Just from a continuous improvement perspective, we've put a new plan in place, and that's specifically around our COVID response. And it's a response plan in case we have an outbreak within the organisation. So within that plan, it gives us gives the IMT a good guideline as to how to manage an outbreak within our organisation, and it has several trigger points that we then respond to if we had to have an outbreak within our own organisation. From an incident perspective, so for the reporting quarter, 7 incidents. And if we look at our year-to-date total of 38, so for 2021, 38 incidents for the year, which is down from 2020 by 4. And that's me. Questions?
Councillor McCallum.
Thank you. Could you just comment on the 2 physical distancing?
Ah.
I didn't actually quite understand that.
Yeah, so they were near misses, so where we've had interactions with individuals in a public type environment, so a meeting in which, I hate to say it, but I think it happened in the council chambers, where we had just a few people that from a physical distancing and not being masked up at the time. So, close interaction.
Councillor Beard.
Yeah, just quickly on the, whether it's not quite health and safety, but the light utility vehicles, how many do we operate?
Only one.
And when we considered it, did you consider an electric variant of that, or was it just?
So yes, we did. And from that perspective, and I speak under correction, but when they were assessing to purchase it, I think the concern was just the remote locations that they use it. That if it had to run out of battery or something like that, it would be considered as a potential health and safety risk to the organisation. So yes, it was considered. But the choice was made then to go for the I think it's petrol operated.
Right, thank you.
Bruce.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks, Paul, for the report. Very helpful. Just a couple of questions, please. One is, I was interested in the Undaria project from a health and safety perspective, and I think we have said basically it's been cleared. If I understand it correctly, later in the report, later in our papers, it says WorkSafe cleared our approach to the Undaria program. Is that right?
Yes. So they cleared our approach to the training of our divers. So, and that was to bring them up to the scientific diver level. So they basically approved that process.
What I was trying to say is, where's the expertise in the organisation to clear that? But if it's WorkSafe and external, I guess that's really helpful. So I'm pleased about that. One other thing, and look, it's probably ignorance on my part or oversight. On page 15, we talk about the work you've done, which is great to see. Compliance with an external audit, external third-party audit. Have we seen the results of that audit?
Well, we're going to be bringing a report through to exec, which will then fall through to those, the high risk areas and the work and the activity that we're doing to address those. Yep.
I don't dismiss the work that we're doing internally, and it's great to see the systems going, but to have the external view, Amy and Paul, is a really helpful work from a committee perspective, so that's great. Thanks.
Thanks, Bruce. Just would like personally to congratulate you on offering staff time to get their vaccinations done without making it a drama. That's really important, so thanks for that. Councillor McPhail?
Yeah, it's more of a heads up in regards to obviously team going out to farms and things. And there are some farms now creating bubbles within their systems because of the new variant, harvest time and that they just can't afford to have people sick and things like that. So there's policies being set up on farms in regards to protecting their own workers. Now, it's just more of a heads up that we need to be careful that we don't. I'm just trying to work out how the communication when you send someone that obviously we can't necessarily say that everybody's vaccinated going out on, I don't know if we are, I don't know where the position is quite yet. But it's just more saying we just need to make sure we respect people's systems. They're trying to protect their workers and everything, and we need to be respectful of that. So I'm just trying to get that comms, wondering how we deal with some of that sort of stuff.
Absolutely. So, from a risk assessment perspective, our teams going out into the field are doing exactly that. So they are conducting those risk assessments. They are trying to, obviously try and make contact with properties before they actually attend that property, to establish the vaccination status of that property in particular. So, particularly if they've got a mandated requirement that they've mandated with internally, and then obviously respecting that, and sending staff that are vaccinated to that property, using the vaccine pass and all that. And then obviously from an organisational perspective, that exact question is brought up in our risk assessment itself. So we've acknowledged that we might be currently an unmandated vaccination site. However, we do know that sites and other organisations around us are mandating, and we've got to respect that and obviously consider that in any of our work programs going forward.
Thanks. Would somebody like to move that recommendation to note the report?
Can I have a question?
Ooh, yes. It's early yet.
You called his name, it's Councillor McPhail that opened. So I'm not sure who's making a turn.
You got used to me being on that side.
As you're told, that's all you need to worry about.
It is really that, in the compliance space and doing audits on airport systems, does that same approach take? Because we can basically do that contactlessly if there's actually communication. But there has been a view that we just turn up and do the inspection unannounced. And there's reasons both sides for that, but I think right now we need to be on the shy of caution. And I think if we're after best behaviour, communication, as Councillor McPhail has pointed out, is actually critical. So I'd rather we over-communicated and got things right. The last thing we want to do is be pulled into an incident that there's been unnecessary distancing issues or other issues that come up because not necessarily the best friend in the community.
So just on that perspective, our teams are acutely aware of the concerns out there and the environment they're working in. So, we have got our business, there's quite a big piece of work that's happening currently. It's around our business continuity planning. And like most organisations, we also are considering working in bubbles, we're working in shifts and trying to, protect as many of our workers as possible. And to keep them separated. So that's definitely a consideration in their risk assessment, is exactly what you're saying, is about, how can we do this remotely? How can we better communicate things, particularly that we now have to have access or get access onto someone's property, because we don't want to be exposing ourselves necessarily to this new variant. So, I'm confident our teams are giving it due consideration.
Thank you, Councillor McCallum. Seconded Chairman Horrell. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you, Paul. Item 9.2, the Information Management Systems Technology and Data Update. Jane and Paula.
Kia ora, and Happy New Year to you all. Nice to see some virtual faces again. I'll take the report as read and just like to highlight the following points around that IMS strategy has, this work has got underway, and the initial scoping has been, meetings have been held, and we're working with a consultant on delivering that. The contact management project, that's making some good progress. We have a part-time resource focusing on this project, and that there's also the advantage of people working from home is that we've got some of Paula's team focused on some of that work while they are at home during this period. The objective browser, that again has proved to be beneficial for working from home and has enabled easy access to documents. The privacy policy upgrade, update has been, it's an internal policy, strengthening our knowledge and ensuring that staff have a better understanding of their requirements. The cyber security, there's ongoing work in the background. We weren't affected by the Log4j variant that came out pre-Christmas, and that there is work underway with the cloud portal. And we are still to catch up with Clutha District Council to see how they're going with their 24/7 monitoring. The data update, there's a focus on online development and improving our customer service there, and we've started the Microsoft Office 365 pilot group is underway and getting migrated this week. Is there any question?
Mr. Robertson.
Yeah, good day, Jane. It's Bruce here. Actually, you haven't got my Zoom on. I'm probably being naughty.
No, I can see you.
A couple of questions, please. Actually, three, in fact. You covered off quickly the IM strategy, and if I got it correct, you've done the scoping and you're working with a consultant. That's great. Are you able to give us any hint of the direction of travel that IM strategy might take?
Amy, do you want to?
Yes, I can probably take it. I think it's early doors yet. What I could say is that it's probably going to be broader than the approach that we've had in the past, recognising that like data is absolute gold, you know, and the wealth of information that we get, that it will feed into the digitisation of government approach. There are clear steps that the chief archivist wants us to take, and it's I think there's an increasing focus not just on information coming in and what we do with it, but actually how we dispose of it as well. And there's a really interesting, you know, we talk about information overload, but there's a really interesting term that the chief archivist is using called digital landfill, which probably describes in a huge amount of ways the amount of information that we're all sitting on that we potentially don't need. And also in terms of the organisational shifts that we want to make, how do we pull the data that we've got and package it in a way that's meaningful to ourselves, to our communities, to the work that we're doing, and, you know, I guess to the wider New Zealand picture of what's going on. So doing all of that in a joined up way, I think it's perhaps been larger in scope than our previous approach. But it's very, very, very early days.
I wonder, Amy, if it's something that as a committee we could perhaps get a briefing on a wee bit later on.
Sure.
We've tackled information in various forms, and I'm thinking back particularly to the science stuff, and we've had consultants in. So I don't mean this, it sounds a bit nasty from me, but I suspect we've spent a lot, and I'm not quite certain what we've gained.
Yep.
So I think it would be useful if we had, at some appropriate stage, perhaps when you've got further down the track with the IM strategy, that bigger sense of data management, data governance, what we're trying to aim for, with a bit of clarity, I think we could.
I would be hopeful that once we got, because I think our next meeting is scheduled for about June, that we will be able to bring, you know, more concrete picture forwards for you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The second question I had was around the privacy policy, which and probably it's not fair to ask Jane this question, but Jane did mention it's an internal policy essentially at management level. Can I say from my experience, it's probably be really helpful if the committee, in fact all councillors had some awareness about what our privacy policy settings were.
Sure.
And even dare I say some training.
Sure.
Privacy is starting to affect us. Coming down this morning, the Privacy Commission was on at least twice over issues, and I think we as governments, I'm about to say as elected members, I'm not one, probably could do that. So if I just note that. The other thing, Jane, which probably you can help with, is when did we last deal with training of staff around phishing and various forms of security issues, which we all recognise the individual as the highest security risk rather than actually the technology.
Thank you, Bruce. We haven't done any formal training in the past, and there is scheduled training in the first quarter. I'm hoping sort of March, April, that will be, and we're going to start at the top with councillors and flow that down to
Jane.
to the ELT and staff. There's comms put out regularly to all staff through, via different our different methods of communication. But yeah, there will be some formal training coming up, and in this new world that we live in, it'll more than likely be virtual.
You've probably helped me, Jane, because firstly, your report says the last quarter of the financial year, not the third quarter, which is useful. And if you haven't done it before, it would make a lot of sense that it could be done with some priority. So interesting to hear that. So March, I mean, it's essentially now, so that's good. Thank you.
Sorry, yeah, I was going first quarter of this year as opposed to the last quarter of the financial year being the same.
Through you, Chair, Bruce, just to speak to your point about the Privacy Commission, I think it just raises, it's sympathetic to the fact that, we do have an awful lot more data out there, information is more widely available, and, the need to protect and preserve people's privacy is really, really important. And Paula, can I just, in terms of Bruce's comments, if you had anything you wanted to add in relation to that?
Probably with regards to the privacy policy and the fact that we've actually rolled it out, it needs to be accompanied by some training, which we are proposing to do actually now in the second quarter. I know in the report it says the first, but it will be the second quarter, purely because we want to actually roll out that training with Lagoima training, because they sit side by side. It's really important that we deliver really strong training and actually not change the messages if things change in the Lagoima space. So that's why we're holding it off till the second quarter. With regards to the policy and it coming to the committee, I think that's a really, really good idea. I think it's really important everybody understands privacy at every level. So I'd be happy to see that happen as well.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Right. Chairman Horrell.
Yes, Madam Chairman, I'm learning things this morning. Fishing in digital landfalls probably aren't my forte, but
Sorry, fine.
but just on our website, we've had some criticisms that it's not easy to access things. I noticed the science thing is now much easier to get to, but how are we getting on with making our website more user friendly for the public?
I'm looking at David down the end of down the end of the room, who has newly joined the comms team in the digital space. David, do you have any comment that you would like to make in relation to this?
Yeah, it's definitely under review. We worked with the team to try to figure out the best user experience and what we can do to make it bigger. So there is work in progress.
Thanks, David. Rob, did you want to?
I just wondered
So-
whether I wanted to add anything as well.
Oh, Wilma?
Thanks, David. Kia ora. Thank you for responding. Yes, Chair and councillors, we part of the reorganisation of the communications team was to put a senior team leader into the digital space to ensure oversight of that digital communications program. So David has joined us this year, and with that is one of his many but rather urgent briefs is to look at the website, at its content and its architecture.
Thanks, Wilma. Good luck, David. Any further questions? Councillor McCallum, sorry.
A couple of questions / comments, but the website, and also the data information going in and out and letters and that go backs and forwards and crossovers of data and letters and compliance, etc. I'm wondering whether we should be looking at it from the mirror image point of view. In other words, what does their clients actually see? We actually have a lot of looking from our point of view, but I think sometimes we miss what the client actually sees and how they understand this technology. So I wonder whether we, it's about getting one or two people in and saying, well, what do you expect on the website? Do you want an organisational layer, architecture along the side? What is it that actually makes it easier for you to actually go through the website and find the things that you need? So there's that side of it. But I get a lot of complaints around all my data for irrigation, as an example, was sent in telemetry, but I get a letter threatening me with a fine and non-compliance because I haven't got my data in. So we need to tidy some of that stuff up, because that is not helping our internal relations. But my real question, Jane, really is, if we were attacked, what would it look like? How long would it be before we could shut down, and what material would they actually get before we could actually be reset and operational again? And I've got the Hamilton Hospital in the back of my mind. It took them a long time to actually get on top, and I don't know what the outcome of that totally was, but they basically had to rebuild another system to actually take data across, and data was lost. Privacy was lost through that experience. So I'm just wondering how exposed we are. I know when I was with LIC, they actually reset their whole system in another site using the systems they had, and they could get it down within a day. They could actually be set up and operational from another site with full function. And I don't know how we are placed for that.
Thank you, Councillor McCallum. So through our project that we did last year, and a project that's actually also been nominated for a Project of the Year through the Algorithm Awards, is that we have our Datto backups that enables us to stand up our entire environment in the cloud, and there's processes in place now to test that. And there will be at some stage this year, we haven't scheduled it, for a full cyber attack simulation event to take place. And so that will fully test us. We've got penetration testing going to happen this year as part of this cybersecurity work. Again, just to review, and also we had our cyber audit last year that identified some areas more of internal vulnerabilities more than, and that was around access of information internally, not access of information externally. So, and also we're looking at that piece of work that Clutha are doing through their 24/7 detection and response. So that service has got a reasonable cost to it, but it does give us 365 days a year, 24/7 detection. So that's all part of that, and that will be reported on by the next OPAC meeting.
Thanks, Jane.
Follow up to that. Jane, you actually raised an interesting point which I hadn't quite thought of. Internal access to areas that is not necessarily within the work program of an employee, doesn't matter at what level. Has that been considered? Because if you're a destructive person getting into the organisation, you can get a lot of data out that really you aren't entitled to.
Yes, absolutely. We work with Paula's team with that. The great advantage of a lot of our systems that they have really strong auditing and history in the background, so we can actually see if somebody has accessed some information that they shouldn't have, or that in a lot of areas that all those secure areas are all locked down. HR, people and capability, health and safety have all got strong security measures around them. Payroll.
Thanks, Jane. Paula, did you want to say something?
Just wanted to add to that for Jane, just to clarify the audit trails with regards to Objective, which is our document management system in particular. It's really about compliance to the Public Records Act and the fact that we do actually have to prove the integrity of our records. So that's actually also for a situation for enforcement with the courts. If we needed to print off an audit trail of who touched a document, who had actually been in the system, that's available. So that's actually quite strong in that space. We do have risks elsewhere, is what I'll actually say, is that we do have network drives and things like that where they're not auditable really effectively. And it is something in an area in information management where we do need to really tidy up. And that's actually probably part of our whole information management strategy and where we're going in the future.
Thanks, Paula. Sorry, excuse me. Any other questions? I think for me, the general feeling is that we, perhaps councillors are operating in the dark a wee bit because it's not necessarily our native language, all of this. So a good session on how all this fits together and how it all is, and maybe single syllable words to begin with would be really helpful, because I think we're working a wee bit blind perhaps. So would appreciate some of that from the team. Thanks very much.
We'll take that on board with Chair.
Yeah, thanks, Jane. I know you've got enough work to do, but we need to understand.
Absolutely.
Thanks very much. So somebody to remove that, we note that activity and progress, please. Thanks. Chairman Horrell, seconded. Thank you, Councillor Beard. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Item 3 is the Economic Recovery Projects report, and I believe that Raymond is that right? And Ali, are you there? Oh, there you are. Hello. Sorry, my screen keeps moving. So, Ali mostly by the looks of it, because Raymond's not running up to the front.
He should be.
Come on. Thanks. Whoever's going to speak first, take it away. Thank you.
Should I just introduce the report, Ali, or are you happy just to continue?
Well, we were expecting Boff and Miskell to do most of the talking, and we were here to answer questions.
Yeah. So I don't. Maybe just to say, this is obviously our economic recovery projects updates of our 12 projects. This is a report supplied by Boff and Miskell, we obviously technically respond to. So I don't think Boffer's here today, and so if there are any, take the report as read, and if there's any questions, I'm sure Ali or Raymond can answer them.
Thanks, Paul. Apologies, I didn't have you on my list of people. Sorry about that. Well, yes, we'll start with questions then. Questions, Councillor McKellar.
I know we're going to be talking about some of the stuff later, but my first response was there's a lot of red. And in regard to that, I'm really concerned that because this is an opportunity that we don't get very often to actually do this stuff. We need to move the stuff through at pace. And there seems to be one or two technical roadblocks sitting in the way. And I thought this stuff was a little bit further down the track. How do we move these projects forward so we don't have these reds?
Yeah, Chair, in terms of the climate resilience projects, they are complex things. Resourcing has certainly been an issue for us. As of Monday, Tuesday, we managed to accepted an offer of employment project engineer, so we are that will certainly help in terms of expanding the team and the resources that we have available to deliver these projects. Yeah, I think the word ambitious has been used, and it is ambitious. They're all obviously projects that are have some strong drivers to them. But again, they're complex things to deliver, and I guess that's been the messaging that's gone back to central government on a number of occasions. I appreciate the timeframes that government has imposed with the funding agreement, but we need to deliver these in a careful and considered way. Flood protection has inherent risks associated with it and residual risks associated with it, and I guess from my perspective, from a professional perspective, not wanting to compromise process and due diligence and a thorough investigation and design process to necessarily meet
some of those timeframes that are imposed.
Chair, can I ask Rowan just to also update the committee? You know, we have talked about getting some work cracking this construction season. And I know in the Tara, we've got a bit of thinking that's progressing, so I think we really need to demonstrate the conference point of view that we're underway. So, you want to touch on?
Yeah, well, there's certainly a lot happening. Maybe not a lot happening visible in terms of earth-moving equipment operating. As the Chief Executive says, we are looking to escalate sort of subsections of the Wyndham and Gore projects. That's not without its challenges as well. We are working on a plan to do that, at least get some work started this summer. There are some challenges around that, but certainly applying some focus to that at the moment.
In Boundary Creek?
Yeah, true, and yes, quite right. So Boundary Creek is the project that started last summer. So the Wire project is complete. Boundary Creek project is progressing well. Wyman is about to go out to tender. And investigation and design for Gore and for Wyndham is well advanced. We're not where we said we would be, and there's no disguising that. That said, I think in the initial funding agreement, we said that Gore was going to be completed November last year, or it might have even been the year before. So I guess it kind of comes back to some ambition around that, but making sure that we have a robust investigation and design process.
Councillor Beard, and then Mr Robson, and then Jenny Hock.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just again on the Gore town stopping upgrade, the relationship with Takata Whenua, how is that progressing? Are we on track with their understanding of what we want to do? Are we on the same line with them? Chair, be I guess reluctant to put words into the amounts. I guess probably the best way of answering that is with the last meeting with Gore District Council, we had representatives there from Runanga for the entire conversation and discussion. I think they have a good understanding of the projects, and they're certainly an integral part of the project delivery. So there's, I guess the simple answer is there is, from my perspective anyway, there's a strong connect with them there with
If I can just add to that meeting.
Yes.
Just to, that I specifically asked Dewey, are you comfortable with what's going on? He is very much supportive of what's going on. So I think they're all good.
Great. Mr Robertson.
Look, I share Lloyd's concerns about the red here, which is significant and actually challenging, and I'm also very conscious of the challenging nature of any capital program at this stage around the country. Absolutely. I want to ask a sort of a systems question. Are our arrangements up to scratch? Because it strikes me that these are high risk. I know I have said in this room before, if we're taking on Kanoa money, we're taking on jobs for nature money, it doesn't matter who it is from the Crown, in the current environment, that's really high risk. It should, we should grab the opportunity, but it comes with a high risk because of their reporting needs and their demands in terms of timing and delivery. So obviously, if we were meant to complete Gore by November last year, Kanoa must be totally on side. But I'm wanting to just check at this point, because it's been said before that it's gone very well, that our internal arrangements around the PMO, our internal arrangements around there being a governance group, which, not to confuse with elected members, but understands internal, is that up to scratch given we've got so much red, or is it not performing?
Well, I'll put in place a PMO to actually give me the confidence that we've got a lot of red here. I guess we had a meeting yesterday, and this is evolving, I guess. You know, if you step back a wee bit, we've had capacity issues internally that we're dealing with, and recruitment in this current environment is challenging. So we've got a whole lot of things, you know, tide and headwinds, if you like, that we're working our way through. And as Roman says, getting a focus on getting the design right and getting our foundations in place, if you like, designs, and making sure this is going to really stand up on a big flood. All of these things critical. We're doing that. So this is evolving. I'm really pleased we've got a new person on board. Our governance arrangements, I think, is also improving. This red does concern us all, and the questions we're asking is actually putting more emphasis on what are we doing about it, and are we confident we're going to turn that into some, you know, change that colour to something a bit more, you know, a bit greener, at least some of it, which we're confident we will in time do. So I think we, you know, we've got an ongoing focus on making sure the PMO arrangements are working. We've at the moment, we're contracting them out. And part of Dom's role is to actually look at that whole area. And do we need to bring it in-house, or so we'll stay contracted out until we move it. And so these are works in progress. We're very, very aware of that red market. And we're very much aware of Kanoa's interest in this as well, and visited us, and we're having an ongoing conversation. So, you know, probably not quite giving you the answer, which is, hey, we're fine, or we'll be by Christmas sort of thing, you know. Well, but maybe not a very good comparison.
Smiley question all the time.
Somewhere over there. But if you know what I mean. So this is, I'm really keen to come back to you in June, or next time we talk with us, and I think we also need to look at how do we look at our reporting to you with that amount of red there. So we'll be thinking about all that. The executive will be doing some thinking around making sure we are fit for purpose and how cranking up our confidence and able to deliver this. You know, the issues we've got is we had a program, $99 million program, which our local share was about 4.6 from memory, around that percent. This is all work we wanted to do in this 10-year period. So we had to grab that opportunity, I guess. Now we've got to make sure actually we can deliver it. And I guess it's fair to say, because of things beyond our control, largely, in terms of staff and what's happened previously to Raymond, you know, we're in catch-up phase, and I'm keen we catch up as quickly as we can.
The whole climate resilience projects is built on a conversation with central government prior to the 2020 lockdown around government needing to come back to the table in terms of central government funding for flood protection nationally. And part of the reason why we were successful with the funding application, the shovel-ready funding application, was because of that conversation we've been having with government. I guess in an ideal world, it would have been, to quote Horizons councillor, it would have been nice not to have the tap turned on slowly rather than the fire hose pointed at us. And that's not just ES, that's across the country. Regional councils are struggling with, you know, the fact that government hasn't funded this area for the best part of 30 years, and then all of a sudden it turns on the floodgates. It does make it difficult to be able to adapt to that.
It does reinforce the need for it to have our arrangements, internal arrangements, up to speed, and that's what we're working on at the moment to get them there. And that red is good.
So the absence of a project manager role is actually the internal sponsor in our organisation for it, because we do have, if I've understood it correctly, Boff and Miskell, because they've prepared the report, and as project managers. So we're not suffering from a resource in terms of actually doing the work. It's the internal resource to manage and run Boff and Miskell.
And well, to run the project and to report to Boff and Miskell. And so that's, and to oversee the construction on the ground. So, you know, that's the area that we've now got some resource for. Engineer, you know, our own engineers our own teams are busy with business as usual. And, you know, making sure that the existing systems and catchments are serviced. So this new resource will help us oversee actually be able to have a real focus on getting this work done and working with Raymond and his team to ensure that the design is appropriate.
So from a program and a systems perspective, I get the point that we've had to stand, I mean, I think your point really, Raymond, is we've had to stand up these projects really fast without the forethought that ideally you'd have, okay? Because it was a chance to grab $19 million. Get it, it's fine. And don't blame, in fact, I'm strong support for doing it, so let's go for it. But we're bursting our timelines. So where do we stand with Kanoa?
Well, the relationship, so they are aware of the red, and they are asking us to demonstrate some progress this summer, and shift some dirt this summer, and to finish the other design work. So, you know, we are in contact with them, and I think part of this is around demonstrating that we're on the job and there'll be some dirt moving, you know, and I guess, and also telling that story around how this is happening, and because we need to share that good news story and they need to share the good news story as well. So hence Boundary Creek, we did a bit of publicity about that because that was the one area where a bit of water got out of there into Mataura in the floods 2 years ago. And so we took the advantage of telling a bit of story. So they are very good.
So we've got a big risk that if we don't deliver some dirt, Kanoa might get unhappy. They'll turn the tap off, which is equally a problem for us because we'll have costs we've got to bear.
So you know, I guess the thing is they will be looking for some action, and who knows what their reaction will be. You know, they are very comfortable with our progress, and or they are aware of our progress with the pump station, and are aware that that's.
Robert, it's all I'm just trying to push you, so I don't want to make this like I'm extracting, you know, blood from stone or something. But the system risks are something that I think this committee should be much more aware of. So the project by project stuff is really important. I don't doubt that, and we're going to, as you say, going to have a discussion later about it. But what interests me here is actually what is the organisational strength around the real risk. You know, and we have got program level risks here. Our relationship with Kanoa, our capacity to get central to retain central government money, our ability as an organisation to deliver, and that's not in this report. And that is actually as critical as whether we can deliver on a Gore Stop Bank or a Stead Street flood scheme. And that's what I think is missing from here, which in one sense goes back to my original systems question. Is the governance group over all of this? Because we're not as a governing body, and I'll be dead keen to know the governance group has got this as sort of like the top three things they talk about when you met yesterday and what have you. Because that's what this is screaming out to me is we've got program level. How do we deliver the whole package? Not just one individual, and as you know, we'll come back to that process. I'll leave it. It looks a rhetorical question, mate, and I hear your point that you're looking at it. So I'm just not confident we've got all the weaknesses in this process lined out.
So the good points, Bruce, about managing the risk. One of the things we've asked them office to do is just look at what are the mitigations, but I can take your point around actually have we covered all the risks, and there's a reputational risk in here, which I guess it would be covered, I think, in that risks issues, but we need to be more visible about it, and look at, and I guess we can come back to OPAC with a wee bit more of telling a story about how the governance group is working and what we're doing about this issue.
Great, mate. Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce. Chairman Hurrell, do you still have a question?
Yes, well, part of it's probably been covered, but I guess when I look at this, my biggest concern is the risk of losing this government money. So, and we've had quite a bit of conversation about it now. The good communication with them, because I suspect there's not going to be any more money, but I think if the communication is good, the money that's been promised can be retained. And I guess the other part of the risk is we don't want to get an inferior job by rushing it and doing a substandard job. So it's just ticking off all those boxes really. As Rob said, we're getting 10 years work done in a short time. It's an opportunity we couldn't afford to miss, but it's just having those conversations, making sure that we keep the confidence and retain all that money, and it goes, it's all about resilience. The last thing you want to do is rush in and have a substandard job either. So, but it sounds like it's in hand, but that's probably the benefit of the traffic light system. For governance, Red does open your eyes and you ask the questions. So hopefully we'll get reporting going down the track that says that the colour's changing.
Thank you. Time seems to be the thing we don't have enough of. Any further questions? Anybody out in the Zoom-averse that wanted to ask a question? Are you right? Good night. Thanks for that tricky report to have to front up with, so thanks very much, team.
Could I just also talk about the Greens?
Oh yes, that was my next statement actually.
Well done, Rob. Sorry.
Hey, I've always thought that our river engineering was an area we need to build capacity in. I mean, my time and it's great that's happening, and so with the challenges. The biodiversity space, the team are doing a fabulous job in some really difficult situations. I've looked at Fielden and the risks there, and the amount of work that's going on. So I'm really proud of the team for what they've achieved. And we've got a wee bit of red over the page, which was lost over early, haven't we? Around predator-free, but we're doing some work around actually making sure that actually if we're going to be involved with predator-free Southland, that it's on the terms that are going to suit us and not actually bite us later on. It's got to be realistic. So some of the timeframes that have been discussed with them, we're having a conversation about, so doing a bit of rescoping. So really good, Cora, but also wanted to just finish on the green.
Yes, I was actually just going to say, it's somewhat ironic that the wild and conifer control program is green when they shouldn't be green at all, the wild and conifers, if you know what I mean. But that's great because that's a thing. Yes. Oh, Councillor McCallum, is this a question?
Yes, it is.
Good.
So the Chief Executive, Rob, I wonder whether this predator-free is, if we were over it well enough to understand the program and our roles and responsibilities in here. I was involved in the earlier parts of this, big ambitions. That was fine, but I just wonder we've got sort of lost in the detail of it. There's a lot of minor projects going and they're not linking that well together. Is there a bigger overarching global view here that we're missing? Because this is, the social expectations are very high, but I think the stuff on the ground is not actually delivering a pathway through to some of the targets that are there.
Yeah, look, I think we are over the detail. I think that's why we're just holding back and doing some rescoping to make it, and I'll ask Ellie to tidy up after my initial comments. But yeah, look, some of the requirements we didn't think were realistic coming at us, and so we're doing a bit of rescoping. We're very passionate about, and because it is a nationwide program, and our team have been doing some great work here in Southland with the Possible Control Program, which is long-standing and it works really successfully. So there's an opportunity for us potentially to get a wider predator-free program, but it's got to be on sensible terms. So we're having some conversation with the predator-free board. So potentially, exciting, but we've got to. So I think we're over the detail, but also we've got to be realistic about what can be achieved, and because we want to make sure if we sign up to it that we can make sure it's green. But Ali, is there anything else you'd like to share with your permission? Ali, anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, so I guess we've got the project includes sort of 3 different tiers of work. There's the tier of work which is looking at that strategic plan for the whole of Southland and what actually does that look like. So that big picture conversations. There's a tier of work around the existing, all the existing groups and how we can support them and join them up a little bit better. And then there's the tier of work on the real detail of how do we start making Bluff and the wider Arua area predator free. first. So we've got 3 strands of work within the programme. They've all been delayed because we can't replace our project manager until we sort out the deed with Predator Free 2050. So we can't really progress on those 2 strategic pieces of work at the moment because we don't have a project manager, and we can't progress with the really detailed work done in Arua because we don't have a project manager and the other roles that sort of are tied in. So it all kind of goes back to the deed and the relationship with Predator Free 2050. And the new proposal that they have come to us, we don't think is workable within the time and the money that they're prepared to give us. So that's what we're negotiating now, is to try and make it really workable. So just want to reassure you that we haven't lost sight of the big picture. We are looking at the whole strategy, and also how Predator Free Southland ties in with Predator Free Rakura and our response with biosecurity border and stuff as that happens. So we haven't lost sight of it. We don't have a project manager and we don't have any money at the moment. So we're doing what we can with what we've got.
Thanks, Ellie. Okay, given all of that and some excellent questions, thank you, everybody. Somebody like to move the report, please?
Yes, I'll move the move.
Thank you, Bruce. Seconded by Councillor McCallum. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Thanks, Raymond. Moving on to 9.4, which is the annual activity plan. Tanya, are you there?
Yes, Chair, I am here.
Thank you. Take it away.
Very simple report, Chair, just updating the activity report or activity plan as a result of the last finance OPAC meeting. Just advising that we've added in those items that council has requested, and that is as simple as it is.
Thanks, Tanya. Just a request from me, if you add something, could it be a different colour? Because sometimes I need reminded, even if it just had a background colour temporarily, just to show that it was a change.
Thank you, Chair. That is a very good idea. For those who weren't at the meeting, we've added, as Councillor McCallum mentioned earlier, data review and data's update each quarter for the finance team, from the finance team to the meeting. That was the changes.
Any questions, Councillor McCallum?
It's a question of process more than a question of this report. If I'm aware that we fund and deal with some issues that other committees actually have to do some work first and then we come in behind. And I'm thinking very much of some of the leased land reserves, the White Pine conversations we've had, White Pine Trust, etc., etc. Is there a way, and I was just wondering, just looking at this in that sort of an action items down below, we need to, in this last part of this triennial, move forward with one or two things that are actually in process, but I don't think we've actually got to start for that process to happen. And we need to push that along so we get stuff back so we can actually put it on to full council. And I'm specifically thinking of your area where we've had a meeting down there at White Pine Trust. We've actually had some erosion work considerations. We've talked about some funding issues, access to leased land reserves, etc., etc. But I don't think we've actually got a full work program sitting in there, so Paul can't do his job to actually bring a paper forward. Somehow we need to stimulate that. And it's not necessarily us to do it, but we've actually got to start that process. I've been in here and had a conversation, but we've got to start that so that we can actually follow it through. So there's one-offs that actually need to happen, otherwise we can't, time just runs away. That's what I'm really saying. So I'm not sure how we start that, but we need to think about how we actually get it into our processes of meetings and into committee stuff, because one committee can't do the work unless the other committees see these more stimulating.
What tends to happen in instances is that staff will bring and maybe workshop an item such as these to get a sense of is this got support, and then bring an item forward to committee whether it's regional services or this committee around taking it forward. So I'm not sure whether Paul's got any thoughts around worksheet. This is, I think, sitting with Paul, this one. So
It is, but he's sort of basically waiting for the go light.
well, and so we could discuss this as exec, but anything you want to add at this stage? I guess we've...
Yeah, Rob, I think the potentially conversation in the Regional Services Committee to sort of get a bit more clarity on sort of council's view or the committee's view. For me then to go back to exec and maybe come back to another committee meeting or full council with a kind of a proposal. But yeah, I think I think a conversation in the Regional Services Committee would be helpful.
Can I just chip in, because I think Councillor McCallum raises an interesting point about the systems, to use one of Bruce's words, in place for these kind of not unique but different
One-offs.
Yeah, and sometimes one-offs. So that, and also follows up from Councillor Beard's point earlier about questions and items not getting lost in the network of things that are happening. And from an OPAC perspective, I guess we got the bank account. So I'm just wondering if there are ways that we can establish some more clear pathways for some of these things to happen and report through to more than one committee without doubling up on reporting, for example. I see the Great South report comes up in our activity timetable, but actually, is this the right committee for that report, for example? So I'm just wondering if we maybe need to start thinking about, I don't know, Rob, how we can have a look at the pathways so that the committees are doing optimal work and work's not getting lost.
And so on this, we're seeing there's a few complexities of this one around, is it Watuna Trust? Is it the ES? Is it the Tiwai Parora Trust? And so this involving spending a lot of capital to buy land. How does that fit in with the council? How does it fit in with the trust? So I suspect that Paul needs to do some thinking around, bring it to exec, and we then look at how where should it be discussed, take it forward. The chairman could also ask me to prepare a report on any matters if he so wished. So we've got that avenue as well. But usually it doesn't need to happen because we usually are bringing stuff forward. I guess we've got to recognise that we've got a work program as well that we're shaping up. So we've got to look at, when we're adding things to it, how does it fit in with our work program? Is it adding to the outcomes we're seeking to deliver? That's not throwing a stonewall anyone, but actually saying, how do we bring all this together and is it a sensible part of the program, or should it support long-term trust? But we need to report a brief exec, and then we can look at deciding a way forward. But I think the point's been made. We'll take it.
Thanks. Any other questions, Bruce?
Look, just a couple from me, observations. One is, I was looking at the draft annual report line, even else. And I'm also thinking, by the way, about the end of the training, so there's a bit of work to get through before before the 8th of October, Lord. It's probably indelibly imprinted on your brain, is it? I really just bring in stuff that I'm asking in my other committees. I would presume that the Deloitte would come to us on the 9th of March with their audit plan for the year, number one. Number two, I wonder whether we have had any discussions or thinking or planning around whether we intend having our annual report signed before we close the triennium, in other words, the 8th of October. Is that decision being made? We need to plan for that now if we're going to, otherwise it'll get to that messy thing where it gets handed to the new council. Albeit it'll be the new council, probably, looks for me, I don't know. So I just think that needs a wee bit of work on it. And it also made me think we have the suitable sort of holding pen of forward planning to be developed. and I wondered whether any of these need, I mean, quite frankly, are they going to be here next year as well, those 2022s? And my question probably is, so let's be realistic, probably a good number are, do we need to do any before the end of the triennium? And I wonder, particularly whether the last one, the fund manager review, we must make certain is done before it. In which case it shouldn't be sitting down on the holding pen. We should have a tick on one of these boxes above somewhere.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, could I respond to Mr. Robertson?
Yep.
We have been talking with our audit partners, Bruce, since the end of last year, in fact, when we signed off the last audit report, as to how we were going to do this year, knowing that ideally we would have the document to council before the election, but also acknowledging the last 2 years have been particularly difficult to get an annual report through on time, both from our point of view and theirs. And I asked the question, was their capacity going to change at all? Which is a little bit of crystal ball gazing, because that all depends on opening the borders and many other things. So we do have tentative dates to allow us to ideally complete Friday before the election. It's what you're looking at in that activity report, and I apologise if it's confusing, is ours is only up to June this year. Those dates there are past ones you're looking at if you're looking at November. So at the point that was created, we were planning through to June. So the short answer is we are intending to do our best to get the annual report out prior to the dissolution of this council. Working and knowing, I don't even know if we knew what Omicron was actually when I was talking to the auditors, but acknowledging all those other difficulties, it is always our goal to do that. And so the auditors are working on their audit plan. We've got dates penciled in for interim audit and final audit to make this work if we can.
Thanks, Tanya. I thought it would be good if I could hold my line. It'd be good to see that audit plan in March. That's normal what it is, and look, I totally accept that everybody's, particularly in the audit universe, is pretty tired. But unfortunately, it's a bit relentless, and the year turns around pretty fast.
Yes, it does.
Councillor McPhail. Thanks, Tanya.
If you don't mind, I'll just go back. My mind's been thinking about Lloyd's comments, and just if I can add, I think we really need to elevate at least the property to this. It's an investment for us. It should be discussed. We should be in this environment, in this committee, and from a point that's going to be hugely important in the future when we're trying to allocate. Looking at it, we need people to look at if there's proposals come in and it fits into this. Not necessarily how many staples go on a fence. It's another thing. It's actually it's an asset, and it's an investment, and it's a money earner. And then we're dealing with the obviously what we do with money. Like we should actually probably be getting reported here. It needs to have its own thing. Well, we've got investments. It's part of the investment reports.
So
what it's doing. So I don't know how we scope that, but this is the environment it should be.
is that more of a risk conversation or a finance conversation?
Well, it's a finance, but it's also it's easier to probably put it in this committee in regards that if White Pine is a proposal, it comes to here, because it's a financial decision that we can elevate it to the council if we think, hey, we've had a look.
There's two stages. I think you're quite right. There's two stages, Madam Chair. One is there's a direction of decision making. The other is we have to do the backroom financial implications of that decision. And that to me, like we're expecting something to happen, but I don't know if it's happening in another committee. So we're just trying to link that together so that one pushes the other, and then we've got to find ways of actually reporting so that the council is satisfied that the work that has been done in the right way, in the right order, and the right committees. So it's just, that's why I say it's more of a process thing, but
Agreed.
I'm very mindful that we need to finish some work in this term, because that's our responsibility. I shouldn't have to pass it on to the next council.
Chairman Horrell.
Just on that issue, I've had a conversation with Rob and whether we need to formalise a monthly meeting that probably includes some exec that make sure we tidy up some of these things. Because there is a tendency almost that we're dealing with too much in OPAC that shouldn't. Some of these conversations should be whole of council or different committees. So I think that's a conversation probably we need to have to actually tidy some of this stuff up. And with its loose ends, action sheet items, it's okay, this is sitting here, where's it going? Is it going to regional services? Is it going where? So that we have confidence at a governance level that we're putting things in the right place and we are tidying things up, because time is going to get short between threats of overcome and the amount of time we have to actually get things tidy before another election.
Madam Chair, we can, exec can look at any outstanding items, including the ones we talked about, and look at where they should be progressed, and come back to you with here's where they're sitting. And when we talk about leased land, at the moment it goes to regional services. We can have a look at it. I know there's some Farrell's raised some issues around what needs to be discussed. Let's have a look at where should that through to, and let's have a look at this brief. So at the moment, the leased land, it's on a commercial basis, it's putting money into our system. We're clear. I think the point you've been well made around this is an investment, so we can in that light look at where should this be reporting to. And there's some more work we need to be doing with that land, and to turn it into even return more. This is the key thing. Are we making the most of it? And I guess there's two bits to our leased land. Are we demonstrating environmental leadership the way we manage it as well? So,
Thanks, Robin. Just following Chairman Horrell's point, it reminds me that it was suggested that perhaps the chairs of the committees get together with one or two exec on a regular basis so that we could see where that cross-pollination and cross conversation can be happening, so that we're making sure stuff's coming through. So maybe we could, that's following up that kind of idea, perhaps. Councillor Beard.
Yeah, very quickly. We talked about earlier that I'm just going back to what's showing here, what we thought we talked about. For looking at our debtors, we were going to look at each finance meeting, which is obviously quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4. So under quarter 3, May 24th of May, are we talking debtors on May 23, or is it hasn't got a tick under the age debtors?
Chair, I think Tony might be able to answer that question.
I understand that we're talking debtors quarterly.
The intention is that it would be as at the end of the quarter.
So is that quite finance quarter 3 or not finance quarter 3?
Yes, finance quarter 3, that would be 31st of March.
I'm sure I got to answer it. Is it?
Sorry, Councillor, I couldn't hear you.
So does it need to be a tick under the 24th May column, as in finance quarter 3, or debtors reporting, age debtors reporting?
Yeah, Tony, we've got one in for the 9th of March, but Councillor Beard is asking if the quarter 3, 24th of May meeting will also have a debtors report.
Yes, it should be, and I apologise if it isn't. I had believed that had been updated.
Easy. Great. Somebody like to move that report? Thanks, Mr. Robertson. Seconded, Councillor McPhail. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried, thank you. Right, that takes us to moving into public excluded, and my intention, given that it's 11:27, is for us to cover off the first two items in public excluded, and then break for, I'm not sure whether it's lunch or cup of tea I think it has to be. And then resume after a short break for the remainder of those items in public excluded. Is that clear? Great. Can we have the reasons for moving into public excluded, please, Mel?
To carry on without prejudice or disadvantage negotiations, including commercial and industrial negotiations, to prevent the disclosure or use of official information for improper gain or advantage, and to protect the privacy of natural persons, including that of deceased natural persons.
Someone would like to move that, please? That's Councillor McCallum, seconded Councillor Beard. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. We'll just get David to do the magic.